Hello and welcome to Weird Together. I'm Brennan and Storr, host of the Ghost Story Guys podcast,
I'm Joseph Comeau, host of The Cardinal Rule.
and this is the show where we celebrate the latest and greatest in independent horror films. We're not critics,
We're not experts.
we're just weird together. Joseph, my friend, how are you?
I am great. I am thriving, as my therapist says. But we had a great. We caught up this weekend. You just got back not too long ago from being out of the country. A lot of stuff going on in my life that you and I have been talking about. And so we obviously had a good chance to catch up. But a lot of things going well. I'm enjoying teaching in a way that's just kind of renewed. I will say though, I had an interesting class today. So I'm teaching an intro to sociology class. Did I mention I have a PhD? Did I mention that?
No, it's never come up. This is catching me completely off guard.
Completely off guard. And we were teaching about deviance, and I thought I'd do this new thing where I had my students come up, okay, a list of things that socially would be considered deviant. And that list kind of worried me into the psyche of my freshman. I mean, it was fun. The class is a fun group of kids, but they're like taking a cane away from a blind person, like knocking over an elderly person. I'm like, I mean, there's levels of deviance you can get to before you get to these kinds of things.
I meant smoking, guys.
Yeah, stealing a candy bar. I mean,
Yeah, I was thinking Dennis the Menace. You guys went full Clockwork Orange,
right? So if you're worried about the generation that's coming up in that 18 to 22 range, yeah, you have reason to be. But anyway,
that's
so
fair.
How are you?
That's
Glenn?
fair. Well, I mean, I'm not looking at the weather forecast for dystopia, so that helps. I'm very tired, Joseph. I've been working a lot lately. I'm looking forward to not working a lot. The last of my major social obligations is coming up, my sister's wedding, which it's not an obligation. I'm very much looking forward to it. But, I was away for 2 weeks, and so obviously, the timeline for getting all the shows out gets compressed, and then obviously I'm going away again this weekend, and the weekend is typically when I do a lot of my editing. So yeah, it's been tight, but again, it's coming to the end of it. I'm slowly trying to hash out this move to London, Ontario, which is gradually coming together. When I say nothing's happening yet. I've contacted 1,001 landlords, and apparently they're all making so much money they don't have to pick up the phone, which it sounds like a great situation. So I'm in the wrong business, my friend.
Clearly. But real quick, let's say hey to some of the folks that are in the chat. We've got Rin Lemieux always hanging out with us. Good evening. Thank you for being with us, Rin. And we've got Derek, Street Ray, hanging out with us. Good evening,
hello,
gentlemen.
Derek.
Appreciate you hanging out with us. But we have a film to talk about, don't we, Bren?
Indeed we do. Yes. We have a film that really, really shook me. I think I've reacted more emotionally to this film than I have any other one we've done. And that film is Ryan Stephen Harris's Moon Garden. And Moon Garden tells a story of Emma, a young girl who has suffered an injury and must journey across the land of her psyche as she sits or lays in a coma in order to get back to her family. And there's a lot going on here, Joseph, a lot to talk about. But of course, before we can talk about the film, we got to do that thing we do. Because you never go into any film alone. You never go into any film completely clear. You always have a little baggage. I forgot to cue up the thing because I'm so used to doing this in audio. There we go. Been a while.
We'll fix it in post, right?
You're damn right I'll fix it in post. All right, Joseph. So what, if any, baggage did you have going into Moon Garden?
So I didn't have really any to speak of aside from my initial impressions of the title and the poster art, which I thought were kind of unique. I thought, okay, this has some potential. It seemed with a title like Moon Garden, it's not, the murderous cabin or in the woods or something.
Right, yeah.
It seems like there's going to be maybe some sort of artistic kind of thought process to it. Obviously going into it, then being a father and some of my own family experiences certainly are something that could have potentially been a triggering point for this. But as we'll talk about, not to totally get into that yet, it seems like it impacted you more than it did me in those regards.
Which really surprised me. I don't have kids, I don't have any small children in my life. I mean, my niece is 14, I think, if I remember
Mhm.
right. I'm not good at this stuff. And my niece and nephew on my wife's side are also, they're not really little. So yeah, wouldn't have expected it. But again, yeah, we'll talk about that. For me, I didn't have much baggage either. This was recommended to me by Luke Greensmith, who's a colleague of mine. He hosts the Luke Lore podcast. In fact, some of our new listeners might have found us via Luke Lore. We had a feed drop episode over there last month, or earlier this month, I guess it was. Time has lost all meaning. But yeah, Luke is in the UK, and he saw this, I believe, at Grimfest last fall, and he spoke very highly of it. He mentioned it to me several times, and I've been meaning to get it in the show, and it's just one of those things where, an opportunity hadn't presented itself. But I finally got around to watching it, and yeah, as I mentioned, it had a profound effect. But apart from that, I'm not really familiar with Ryan Stevens Harris's work. I know he was editor on Moonfall, which I have not seen, but I would dearly like to. And he was also the editor on The Hard Way, which is a direct-to-video action film I've seen, which is not amazing, but that was not down to him. This is the first of his directorial efforts I've seen. The other one being, I think, Virus X from 2010. And again, I have not seen that. But I'm very curious to talk about this one with you, Joseph. And of course, there's only one place we can do such a thing, and that's a Talk-to-Gon.
Welcome to the Talk-to-Gon. 2 men enter, 2 men leave.
There she is, our emaciated friend.
Yes, spooky. She's a spooky friend.
Yes, she is. She is.
All right, Joseph. Let's get started. What did you think of Moon Garden?
I rather liked this film. It was not without flaws, but I thought it was ambitious, had sort of an enveloping artistic vision that I really appreciated. So in general, I really enjoyed it. I mean, there were a few warts here and there, but pretty well from the beginning. Something about this kind of grabbed me. Even the opening shot, the kind of that panned over the couple in the bed, was kind of a unique opening shot. And then once the girl was transported into this other realm, her psyche, the thought in my head is, this is ambitious. I like it. I'm into this.
Yeah, it was very ambitious. It took me a minute to sort of find its level. I'll admit, I started watching it and I thought, I don't know. I really want to like this because Luke recommended it. But once it really started moving, I was hooked. And it actually brought up some stuff for me which I wasn't expecting. But maybe we'll save that before we get a little ways in there. But what I wanted to focus on is just the sheer invention involved, like a little ways into her Comeau voyage. Emma meets a man who's credited as the musician, and he essentially he plays a tune for her that her and her mother used to sing together. But in order to do that, he creates a piano or an organ, but that's done by reversing the destruction of it with a sledgehammer.
Right. You get one shot for that scene too.
You really do. Yeah. Yeah. You better break that thing well. Otherwise you're hooped. I mean, in fairness, in my experience, you're going to break a piano, you got to break it fast and get out of there. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, that's in your experience, you say. Huh?
If anyone asks, I was with you all night.
Right.
But I love that. It's again, like, it's the set direction, or pardon me, set design is very, very good. I can't imagine they had much money to work with. And again, just this, it's a relatively simple effect. Just run it in reverse, but it just worked. And then the scene that followed, where Emma and her mother sing the song, again, I cry. I don't mind telling you, I cried a lot during this movie. I cried hard at some points during this movie, and that was very much one place that just wrecked me, was Emma remembering better times with her mother as they sang this song together. And it just destroyed me.
Yeah, and we were talking about that. It is interesting to me because I, based on my own experience in my own family things, there were certain things in this film, like the couple and their struggles that certainly could have been triggering for me, being a parent and the fear that you have. And those things didn't trigger me really all that much. So it's fascinating that those things did so impact you. And I don't know if it's, maybe you're just not used to worrying about kids, whereas my life is every day worrying about those little goblins that I'm responsible for making sure that they're okay. So maybe it's just that you weren't used to it, but you did also mention it connected to some other things. So that was really interesting when you mentioned to me how it impacted you that way.
Yeah. So again, we'll so just answered Derek's question because
Yeah.
it popped up and I can't not see it. I don't know how old Haven Lee Harris is. I can't imagine very old. I'm bad at guessing kids' ages. Joseph, any guesses?
I would guess that the actor was 4 or 5 years old, maybe.
Okay, that's what I would have guessed.
Yeah, maybe younger, but probably around there.
And she was exceptional. She
Mhm.
was so good and
Yeah.
believable in every scene. The scene where she's in the bucket
Mhm.
and she's pulled into the water. I was biting my nails,
Mhm.
just in absolute terror. She sold it the entire time and was just very, very good. I think you might be onto something, in that since I don't have to worry about kids,
Mhm.
I maybe overestimate their like fragility.
Mm.
And I think I've always done that because I've always been a pretty strong person, like
Mhm.
physically, like, I don't seem it, but I like to joke we're Italian peasant stock. We're built to work. We're built for labor. And so I can go and go and go. And it just, like it catches up to me eventually if I'm stupid about it, which I often am. But I always assume that kids are very soft. And so I'm always worried about hurting them with my gorilla strength, like picking up kids. I don't like picking up kids if I can help it. I'm always nervous holding babies, and things like this. And when I was younger, I really used to like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like watch over my sister very
Mm.
intently. She was 4 years younger than I was. And again, I remember someone once telling me like, she's not glass. She's going to be fine. And I was
Right.
like, okay, I guess. But yeah, so I think that definitely has something to do with it. But as I mentioned to you, the thing that kind of really knocked me when I first watched it was the scene where they, of course, put Emma on the board, where they strap her to the board because she's had a spinal injury, and or potentially like a head injury. And when I was maybe about 20 years ago now, um, some friends of mine lost their infant, and it's their story to tell, so I'm not going to get too deeply into it, but it was a very sudden thing.
Mm.
And I just, again, I kind of went through it, and there's grief, and we all kind of grieved it together. And I hadn't thought about it in years, but seeing her strapped to that board, all of a sudden, man, I just felt this not even a flood of emotion. It wasn't that simple, but this just, it was like something like a bookcase moved in my mind, and all this crap came tumbling out because I just suddenly saw that little white coffin at the funeral, and it was a really
Mm.
unexpected connection for me, and I found it really upsetting.
And in that scene that you referenced when they're taking the girl away on the board, the mother yelling at the paramedics, "Don't let her die." Like
Yeah,
the kind of the desperation, right? As a parent, you just think about being in a situation where you're like, you can't do anything and you're just begging them to do what they're obviously going to do everything they can, but you're just pleading almost at the universe and at them and at whoever will listen, right? That how important this is. So, Modest Moose, 1983 has a very, kind of thoughtful comment here. Watching the trailer after I finally got to catch a live recording of you guys, one of my 3 offspring is turning 5 in 2 weeks. I would need to dissociate to watch this or wait 10 years. I feel that, you know.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And Derek is an awful human. Just kidding, Derek. Just kidding, Derek. Kind of no. Conversely, they'll laugh way too hard at her falling down the stairs, just the way it was shot. So yeah, I mean,
I imagine it's hard to shoot a stunt shot of a 5-year-old falling down the stairs.
yeah. I
Just
mean, it
wrap
didn't
her up
look.
in Christmas catalog, send her down again.
it didn't look super realistic, I guess. But that's fine. There's not exactly a 5-year-old stunt person who's trained to do that. Um, so
If there is, I want to see a movie about them, frankly.
right, just a documentary about that. This is Haley. She is a 5-year-old stunt person.
She's smoking. Yeah, I got into the business when I was 3.
Oh man. So yeah. That was definitely impactful, and I think it was also interesting because you talked about children. They're much more resilient than sometimes we think they are, and they're not as strong, but they're also not as heavy. So they fall and they bounce and they're okay usually, and they're just a little more resilient.
Well, it's funny because obviously, having just been in England, Nikki and I were walking around. At one point, we ended up in a skate park, and these kids are just, and it's a park that's been there for a long time. It's a town she grew up in, and these kids are they're just doing their thing.
Yeah.
And she said, I just watched them, and she said, I cringe because I just imagine hitting the ground and every one of my bones just exploding out of my body.
Right.
And I said, yeah, that's exactly what would happen to us. There would be just a sickening thud and then silence.
Crunch.
Yeah, but these kids just bounce around like they're made of rubber, and it's as you say, they're built different, as the kids say.
Yeah. One of the things, and you talked about the main character, the girl, and it was interesting, like, because as she was venturing through this sort of world, she was scared at points, but she was also finding moments of joy, and the character, how the character just kind of forged ahead, just not knowing exactly maybe where she was or what was going on, but she just was like, okay, I'm going to go, and I'm going to, ride the giant rhinoceros creature, and things like this. So it was just interesting to see not only the physical kind of resilience, but also kind of the emotional resilience of this character.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, again, I don't have kids, so, I'm talking to my ass a little bit, but I think that's true of kids, right? I mean, what I remember myself being a kid, you can find joy in a lot of stuff. Like you're, I think, unless there's something really wrong with your chemistry, I think you're kind of hardwired to do that. I think you have to be, because otherwise, dealing with the bullshit of the world, even at that age, is gonna drag you down. And so I think that was a really, effective, what's the exploration of that. I mean, I love the scene again where she's guiding around that giant paper mache rhino. And conversely though, like it was really difficult to watch the scenes where she had to deal with pain. Like, the one that wrecked me was when she ends up in the kind of like the banquet room with the bride and groom. And at first they're dancing on the table and it's fun, and they start kicking things off the table, and it actually still seems fun. And then they really start kicking things off the table, and it's upsetting for her. And watching that little girl try and clean everything up to make it okay again. Oh, dude, I lost my stinking mind. I lost it again, because I think maybe because I perhaps identify with that to a certain degree. This idea that they just want everything to be okay. So the kid will do anything they can to make it okay, and they can't, right? But that's not within their frame of reference. They just think, well, maybe if I do enough of the things, it'll be okay. And that broke my heart.
That didn't strike me that way, but now that you mention it, because now it's kind of drumming up connections and thinking about, like, a child, like, and I've shared this with you, my parents got divorced when I was 13, and it was a little ugly. And so, how being a kid, and I was older than this character, much older, but still, like, thinking about a child in a messy parent situation like she was in, and when the parents don't have their shit together and are fighting, and then the child feeling like a responsibility to try to pick up the pieces or clean it up, or even help the parents not fight, mommy, daddy love each other, and just kind of that just putting yourself in the place of that child. And just, right now, as I think about that, that's very moving and saddening. Right. So that's a really interesting kind of connection there.
Well, the scene where her and her mother are under the covers, and her mother obviously is dealing with some depression.
Yeah.
She's sleeping in, what the father feels she's sleeping in too much. And he tries to, wake her up. But prior to that, the mother and the daughter, they're under the bed, and
Mhm.
she's saying, well, she's trying to get the daughter to fall asleep so she can just stay in bed. And she tells her to describe her perfect day. And she's describing it, but there's no mention of her father. And so the
Mm.
mother says, well, where's daddy? And she said, well, he makes you sad, so he's not there.
Mm.
And again, it just, oh Lord. And really the actress, what is her name? Augie. Is that the person? Yeah, Augie Duke plays the mother. And she just, the look on her face, you know, the sort of the realization that the kid sees more than she thinks she does.
Mhm.
You know, because I do think people sometimes sort of assume kids are dumb or that kids aren't paying attention. And in actual fact, you know, as you know, I mean,
Mhm.
kids hoover up more information than we think they do.
That is completely accurate. Like my two sons, like just the things that they pick up on them. Oh wow, you did hear me say that, and you repeated that. Maybe I should have thought about
Yeah.
that before I
Yeah.
said that. Um, I want to another thing that kind of stood out to me that's related to also the kind of parent. When the film first started, it seemed like it looked like it was setting it up as kind of maybe a domestic abuse situation is, you know, with them exiting. And I actually appreciated that they didn't go in that direction. Obviously, that is a very real thing. It's nothing to take lightly, but there are many relationships that aren't that. And what I saw as it got deeper into the story is sort of a broken marriage with two people who had their own flaws. And I didn't see either of them as, like, she had her depression. She kind of said some unkind things to him when he brought her the tea, right? And he was trying to do at least something. And she, you know, but then he also didn't give them the time, and he was so wrapped up in his deadlines. And they were both flawed, and they were both kind of, you know, had some stake in what it had become. And I kind of thought that was even maybe a little as sad and unfortunate as a little a little refreshing that it wasn't kind of the cliche, oh, he's an abuser or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I wasn't sure, and to be honest, I think that was part of the weird fit for me at the beginning because I was waiting for it to lean one way or the other. I was
Mhm.
waiting for the film to maybe just because I've watched so much trash. I was
Mhm.
waiting for the film to tell me how to feel. Essentially,
Yeah.
you know, I was waiting for it to tell me like, oh, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy. You know,
Mhm.
he is this, she is that. You know, one of the things that I was going to bring up earlier, and it slipped my mind, was I thought they were going to try and play the medical part of it for more drama.
Mm.
You know, the mother at first she refused the ECMO treatment
Mhm.
because she said, you know, you try and cut into my daughter, you try, you see what happens. And it's that misplaced protection, right? The doctor's
Mhm.
just trying to do everything they can to help bring her back, but you know, there is this kind of conditioned protection response, which I understand. And again, I thought they were going to try and wring more drama out of that, or maybe
Mhm.
make like she tries to stop them at the last minute, and it
Mhm.
turns out that would have been the wrong thing to do. And I was
Right.
really, again, I was relieved they didn't do that because it's so cliche.
Mhm.
And again, I think it goes to that no one is the villain; they're both flawed.
Right. But they're both good parents. They're bad partners, but good parents, right? Both of them, I think.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think he's definitely got issues with anger
Yeah.
that affect her view of him. I would say like they're both.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't even say they're both good parents, to be honest with you. I
Okay.
don't think they are.
They both love their daughter. Maybe that's the more
They love their
fair.
daughter. I would say they love their
Yeah.
daughter. I
Yeah.
don't think either of them are good parents. I think they're both
Yeah.
too wrapped up based on
That's
what we
fair.
see in the film. I think they're both too wrapped up in themselves to
Mm.
properly take care of her. Because I mean, and now again, I don't know, but I think it's your job to shield your child as much as possible from the bullshit of the world.
Hmm.
You know, especially from your own bullshit. You know, like I think that for example, if I'm pissed off at someone in public, if someone cuts me off in traffic, if I see they're with a kid, I won't do anything about it.
Mhm.
You know, or if I see, I'll be extra nice. If someone's with a kid and I'm interacting with them, I'll be nicer to them than I ordinarily would because
Mhm.
I like the idea of preserving the notion, at least with this one kid, that people in the world are nice to each other.
Right.
You know, I really dislike this notion that we got to toughen them up. You know, it's an ugly world out there. You better learn. No. The world's going to do that soon enough. All you're teaching this kid is that they can't trust you.
Yeah. I
All you're
think
teaching
there's
this kid is being a garbage person.
I think there's a middle path in being a parent, kind of, at least from my experience. And it's not that you toughen them up, but you do equip them and prepare them. And sometimes that doesn't come by exposing them to that kind of treatment from you, but it does involve, talking about it, making them aware that people aren't always nice and why they aren't nice.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I agree completely about that.
yeah, yeah,
I just mean you don't let them see that you and your wife hate each other
yeah.
and you like mom and dad are like dad's tearing apart the blanket while they're
Mhm.
underneath it and like
Right, right,
that's bad. You know, if the
right.
kid or when she walks in on them screaming at each other at the
Yeah.
beginning of the film, right? That's I mean, my wife works in she works in a place where they deal a lot with separation and family justice and things like this. And the number of stories I hear, always, you know, very, very circumspect stories, but of people who use their kids as pawns
Hmm.
in these kinds of things. And they try to turn their kid against each other, you know,
Yeah,
and I just think, no, no, that's monstrous. You know,
absolutely.
it is your job to pretend like everything's fine. Like, okay, we're not together, but everything's good. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't affect you. You will be loved and taken care of no matter what. But
Mhm.
that based on, I mean, I guess you don't end up at that place if things are going well. But yeah, that doesn't often seem to be the case. Eh,
What I would say is, and obviously we've talked off air about kind of my own experiences. I think you have to, in terms of realistics. I think if like, okay, one of the books that I really love, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. One of the things he talked about is when his parents kind of set them down that they were getting divorced. It was almost like a business meeting. They said, "Okay, we're doing this. Does anyone have any questions?" And he almost felt like angry that that there wasn't something a little more substantive or real or even any emotion. So I think there's a balance where you don't want to fight in front of the kids. You don't want to see, you don't say horrible things about your ex or your partner or what have you. That is important. In fact, the research on divorce and things like this is that the number one predictor statistically of how the kids do in it is, are the parents talking shit about each other or not? Right. And if they aren't, better chance. But I think you have to acknowledge, hey, this did happen for a reason. We have these difficult feelings. So you acknowledge it without making it something they're seeing in manifesting, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, because it would be weird not to acknowledge that something wasn't working. All of a sudden, we're
Right.
just living in different houses for funsies
Right,
now.
right, right.
We turned into Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter. You know, like this
Right.
is no, that would be weird.
You're right,
You know,
right.
like
So there's
that's
about
like the prisoner. We're just never going to speak of this person again.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to say hey to Jenny. She commented when we talked about
Hey,
kids
Jen.
picking up on things. She said they sure do. So thanks for being here with us. But yeah, there's certainly there's a lot of interesting family dynamics, absolutely, kind of within this film for sure.
Yeah, and I really appreciated the complexity of the performances because it
Mhm.
would have been easy to be, you know, to be one way or the other. For the mother to be a really shrill, flighty,
Mhm.
you know, to just be completely lost in herself. Like again, it could have been easy for her to continue the fight against medical treatment to the point of absurdity,
Mhm.
to where you know, like she's not, she has to be restrained because she refuses to let them do anything, and that would be ludicrous, right? And they don't do
Right.
that. They kind of allow her moment of resistance, and we don't ever really see her acquiescing to it. It just happens. But again, I think that's fine because the point of the story is Emma's journey,
Mhm.
not theirs. I mean, theirs is relevant to her, or is relevant only insofar as it kind of assists their journey, which I kind of wonder is maybe just the kids thing, right? Because
Mhm.
I mean, do our journeys matter? You know, as like they matter, but like also getting the kids kind of shepherded through life is a big part of that, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was the girl's story. The parents were just kind of almost background characters, but important ones. Well, let's talk about her journey, in particular the setting, a little bit, if you don't mind, because I want to talk a little bit more directly about the film in its vision. Because to me, this film felt a lot like if Guillermo del Toro had made this film after having watched Skinamarink and having less budget than he did when he made Pan's Labyrinth, because it reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth in a number of ways. some of the things, even the dining hall scene, even though there was a different character there, but there was a dining hall. The chattering teeth creature reminded me a little bit of it because it put in the teeth, right? Just like the creature in the dining hall in Pan's Labyrinth puts in the eyes. It wasn't the same creature, but there were just all these little notes, and just the overall it reminded me a lot of Pan's Labyrinth. And then certainly the journey, of, the girl. So there's obviously in Pan's Labyrinth, there is a child involved, but also there's just that Skinamarink kind of ethos to it of the young child that is on its own, because that was sort of the whole thing in Skinamarink, these kids left on their own. Well, this girl finds herself in this strange place, except it had a better, in my view, more of a story and a better artistic vision than Skinamarink did, but at least captured maybe one of the things about Skinamarink that was one of its interesting points, is that sort of the child on its own sort of a thing.
Right. I mean, that's fair. I would say the only way it would capture Skinamarink is if it just did this
right
for about 45 minutes.
Right.
But yeah, I can see the children in peril thing part of it. Absolutely. I was actually thinking the film it reminded me most of was Mad God.
Oh, a little bit of that too, I saw. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not as nihilistic as Mad God, but still there was definitely that sort of industrial wasteland sense of it. And I thought Teeth was a really great villain.
Yeah.
Really like unsettling. Something tells me it might be similar to something in David Lynch's third season of Twin Peaks. I feel like there was something in there that was similar. It's kind of the teeth thing is kind of ringing a bell, but I can't place it. I haven't seen season 3 in a while.
Also,
but
like
either way, it was very effective. Sorry,
one of the Cenobites as well. It's a little bit of that.
Oh, of course, yeah. I think Chatterer or something.
Yeah, I agree. Though I thought that kind of antagonist was really well done. I think that would, just from a pure kind of visuals and creepiness, I think that character was probably one of the strongest things that they did in the film overall.
Yeah, the princess towards the end didn't work for me quite as well.
Yeah,
but
the Chatterer though. Yeah.
Oh, Chatterer. Yeah.
The teeth creature.
Teeth. Yeah, it's credited as Teeth.
Teeth. Okay, Teeth to me was the strongest point of the visual, and like that character, the way it was presented, the really kind of rapid movements that they did, that is obviously a common thing in films that were also very kind of uncomfortable. So oh wait, we've got an interesting question though here.
Okay.
Elijah J. Burnett. Good evening, gentlemen. You've been given a $2.5 million budget to make your own horror film. What social topic are a must for you, and who do you think is going to be your biggest influence for creative style? Wow, what a great question.
So I know this answer because I actually tried to write the screenplay once.
Then run with it, Brennan, and then I'll just tell you why it's wrong.
Okay, nice. Perfect. Yep, this sounds like college. So
yeah.
So I have an idea. I would want to make a giallo, like a modern day giallo, set in the Rust Belt of America. So I like the idea of having like the strong, striking giallo visuals, but telling a story about a young man who takes identities and uses them to deconstruct communities. And he's got a thing against older people, so he primarily targets older people, especially older men, like boomer men. And he sees himself, he's got no morals whatsoever. He sees himself as a free radical in a cell. Like, he is completely outside of the system, and he just goes where he's directed, and he takes the people he feels deserve to be taken. He has no morals. He has no qualms about anything. He's like sort of like a really brutal Mr. Ripley, but not as smooth.
Okay.
And it's set I actually, again, I wrote 10 pages of a screenplay once. I've never really kind of done that thing, but it starts off in a junkyard, and he throws a man into a car shredder, into a car crusher. And I kind of give up on that because that is, spoiler, too bad. In Halloween Ends, that is how they finally get rid of Michael Myers. Is they throw him into a car crusher. And I watched that and thought, damn it. Not that I was ever going to finish the screenplay anyways, but yeah, so that would my Rust Belt sort of Pennsylvania set giallo, highly stylized, about an amoral killer and a policewoman who has never really lived up to her full potential, and just kind of has always done the safe thing, become a cop, but done it in a very safe way. She goes up against this guy who's completely unmoored from anything that makes up her world.
Okay.
So for
That
me, it would
is-
touch on like social themes of like moving, like the society kind of being stuck in a certain era, and like not older people not letting go.
Mm.
What happens when social decay kind of produces people who don't really have any connection to the society. They feel like completely outside it, so they just decide that they're free from its restraints. So that's my idea.
That's much better than the thing I got. I think if I were going to come up with something, it would probably be something where I would try to explore. And we talked about this on one of our previous podcast episodes. I would try to explore kind of the deep feelings I have about trains. We talked about this. Like I grew up.
Oh yeah,
we were near a railroad track, and something I think about, like at that age, I think I was kind of scared of the dark and ghosts and things like this, although I'd never seen anything like that. And something about the wailing of a train, in the background, the horn and stuff, somehow got embedded in my head, and to me is eerie. Right. So I would probably try to find a way to explore that in a way that really kind of grabs that part of that memory in my brain and just really captures it and somehow conveys that feeling I have of kind of eeriness about that. I'm not sure how I would accomplish it. It would probably be something a little more supernatural horror, where the sound of the train somehow kind of, it's very foreboding, and it kind of is a precursor to something happening. And then maybe the train never arrives or doesn't arrive, but you just keep hearing it. And then when it finally does arrive, whatever the big event happens. This is me spitballing, but it would have something to do with that. But yours is so much more well-developed.
I mean, I think there's something to yours. I think if you have like a train, say like a little bit like 38 Days or 30 Days a Night, you've got vampires who sort of ride the rails. You could even set it during the Dust Bowl. Vampires who ride the rails from town to town. And this idea that, they are sort of social collapse, right? Like if we don't take care of these larger problems, you end up this sort of, they lived in the cities and they just kind of focused on the cities. But when the cities start to fall apart, they got on the trains, and now the vampires are riding the rails with everyone else, and they are taken apart. Just taking people apart. And you could also even kind of visually parallel it to something like Sin Nombre, where the kids were traveling from Central America up to Mexico on the train in order to try and cross the border into the U.S. So there's that. You could sort of use some of that visual language. It's a great movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it, Sin Nombre.
Okay. Interesting. Modest Moose saying about the film that you referenced. Yes, Michael Myers, the baddie whose only surefire death is probably at the hands of a tactical nuke, and then he's the car crusher. Yeah.
I mean, I would love to. I would pay great money to see Michael Myers ride that bomb like Slim Pickens, but I don't know how to set it up. I'm fine if they never make another Halloween movie. I actually liked Halloween Ends more than most people, but I'm good. There's better villains out there. There's newer villains out there. Make another Victor Crowley picture, do it in a way that doesn't kill Adam Green. Just, there are other things we can be doing with our horror bucks.
Right. So you mentioned the princess didn't work for you. I would agree with that. That character was not particularly compelling to me. In any real way.
I felt it was sort of emblematic of a larger issue, which I just thought, even though the movie was only 96 minutes, there were a couple pokey bits where I kind of felt my attention drifting a little bit. But not many. It was not, there was not a lot of fat on it. I don't know what would have fixed it. Maybe that's just, it has to be that way. But yeah, I felt like the princess, not all that necessary, and maybe could have, who's to say? But it might have improved the flow a bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if the princess was somehow supposed to be representative of the girl in some way, in her situation, but I don't feel
I thought
like
it was representative of her mother.
It could have been, and maybe it was, because I know that she was saying some things that her mother was saying. So, and maybe it was, but either way, I just don't feel like it hit that note effectively.
No, I agree. I agree. I think, yeah, I think it was the mother because, the princess lived in the tower until it was
Mhm.
too late, and kind of hid in the tower. And I think, the mother kind of sees herself as having gone the safe route and gotten a guy with a corporate job, but now she's alone.
Mhm.
There's that scene of her in the backyard on her birthday, just releasing balloons into the sky because
Yeah.
there's no one around to celebrate with her. But she remembers a time when, they would have parties and to be honest, I kind of identified with that, right? When I was younger, I had a big, as everyone does when they're younger, I had quite a big friend group, and living where I live now, I've lost touch with pretty much most of my close friends, and the ones I haven't lost touch with have moved,
Yeah.
and so I strongly identify with that because I think it's also part of getting older, right? You lose
Mhm.
touch with people, and unless you're all part of a common group, like you got a church or something together, or you're part of a church, I just think work and family obligations, we're kind of structured our family so that we don't, you're meant to make everything work within the confines of the nuclear unit. And so you're not supposed to need outside people. You're not supposed to want outside people. And so I think that alienates us. And I think it's really dangerous.
I think that's a pretty widely understood socio-demographic trend that as people get older, their friendship groups kind of shrink a little bit. Friends move away, and then we're just not, as we go older, I think we just don't engage in the kinds of activities where we make new friends as actively. And we
Yeah.
get tied up in our existing familial obligations. So that, yeah, that's absolutely something that happens. Derek, real quick, along with what you're saying, said he had to rewatch the end from the princess scene on because he fell asleep. I
That's
had to
fair.
I didn't fall asleep, but I did have to kind of rewind a little bit, or go back a little bit in the stream, and kind of backtrack because I kind of zoned out and just wasn't really paying attention. And I wanted to make sure I did get what happened. So yeah, I think that was a dead spot for, I think, everyone. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. But again, overall, I thought there was just the sound design was brilliant. I loved the music. I liked the set, like the set design, production design. The performances were uniformly great. Again, that little girl was fantastic. I believe she's the director's daughter.
I didn't know that.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and just overall, very very impressed with the film. Did you have any final thoughts?
Just that. So the chattering teeth creature was death, right? I mean, that chasing her, right? Would you
I
say?
I wasn't sure if it was death or because when she finally meets it, she sort of disarms it by recognizing there's nothing there. Like you're empty inside. And so I wasn't sure if that was meant to be sort of like larger, like a larger thing about fear, or if it was, yeah, if it was actually death. I mean, I guess it would have been death if it caught her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was like specifically death or because I don't know what the metaphor would be there then, if there's nothing.
Then she stares into its maw with in a coming from a place of compassion instead of fear, and overcomes it. Because there's a
Man, can I hug death to death?
this little girl can. I mean, I don't know if you
Okay.
can, but she's much more adorable than you. So, I mean, to be fair.
Well, I don't know about that. Let's not go crazy here.
Yeah. Elijah, interesting question. Do you think that's what leads to xenophobia on a larger scale? Are you talking about maybe, is that in
I think it
reference
means
to?
the friendship thing and the narrowing of social
Yeah,
worlds. I think that's part of it. I
perhaps.
mean, this is more Joseph's
Yeah,
territory than mine.
I mean, I am a sociologist, so I guess if
Are
I don't
you?
have it, yeah, have I mentioned that?
No,
So,
never.
uh, I mean, xenophobia is, it's when people have a sense of group threat, right? When they feel like their position is when people feel threatened by something, whether they feel economically vulnerable, politically vulnerable, ideologically vulnerable, they feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they haven't been hugged enough. When people feel threat, they look for an other to be the target of that. And, we have this sort of tribal psychology with in groups and out groups. And so, if your frame of reference becomes, your nation or your what have you, then outsiders become that out, and you blame them for it. So, I will say though, in in general, as we get older, we become more vulnerable and fearful. And this is why sometimes as people get older, they are more drawn to xenophobia and all kinds of isms. So there's a little bit of sociological analysis for the night.
There we go. Dr. Comeau, bringing the science. All right, Joseph. So, yeah, any final thoughts on Moon Garden?
Just that this is one of the films that I probably enjoyed more than most of them we've done. I mean, there've been a number of good films, but yeah, just the visuals worked for me. There were just a lot of things I liked about it. Few minor, critiques, but overall, from start to finish, I found myself liking this film.
Yeah, me too. Whatever flaws in terms of pacing, I feel like might have been. I think the strength of the vision
Mhm.
and the unity of the vision was enough to more than make up for it. I think there was so much going on, and I hope it's doing well. I hope more people are seeing it, because this is the kind of movie that I think people go around saying they don't make movies like this anymore. They
Yeah.
do. It's just they don't have advertising budgets, so no one sees them.
Mhm.
But yeah, and that's again part of why I love doing this show, is because we can shove these movies in front of people and go, hey, watch this,
Yeah,
watch
this is
this.
good.
This is good. Watch this. I mean, it'll probably hopefully get picked up by a streamer at the very least, but I'd love to see it on a big screen. Although I imagine that ship has sailed, being that it played festivals a year ago.
Mhm.
But yeah, I something else that reminded me of, and this is a little bit of a boost thing, but it reminded me of a film called The Boys in the Trees,
Mm.
or Boys in the Trees. And folks, if you can track down Boys in the Trees, for whatever reason, it has very limited distribution. I was only able to rent it by using a VPN because it's not available anywhere in Canada, so I had to rent it in the US. But it's like this for teenagers.
Hmm.
But instead of a coma, it's about two friends who separate, who were really, really close, but kind of drifted apart as teenagers. One joined the cool group, one was kind of left as an outcast, and they sort of find each other on, I want to say, Halloween night, and they sort of band together because some other kids are basically chasing them. But the night takes on a more magical bent the longer it goes on. And I sobbed, just sobbed. It's one of those films where when you realize what it's doing, when you realize like what's happening and like where it's taking you, I don't know. There's just something, to me, there was something really beautiful about that. So if you liked Moon Garden, it's not a horror film. It's just a drama, but it's like a magical realism drama called
Mm.
The Boys in the Trees. And again, just a lovely, lovely movie. So I very much recommend checking that out. All right, my friend. As always, this was a blast. I enjoyed this one. I wasn't sure, as I mentioned to you, I wasn't as prepared for this one as I ordinarily would like to be. But my love for the film, I think our collective enthusiasm for the film carried the day. Where can everyone find you online?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at JOKOMO13, JOKOMO13. And if you happen to be into NFL football, I do this thing called the Cardinal Rule. It's kind of one of my other passions, Arizona Cardinals analysis.
All right. I'm Largely the Truth on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't use it anymore. You can find my other show, The Ghost Story Guys, everywhere fine podcasts live. And there was something else.
Music?
No. Oh, yeah, well, that too. I was going to say, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can also get audio versions of the show. They're on YouTube. You can also get an RSS feed. And we encourage you to leave reviews of the show anywhere you can on iTunes, Spotify. It helps just sort of boost awareness of what we're doing. And it also makes us feel good to see the ratings come by. So again, if you get a chance, 5 stars, we would very much appreciate it. Our music is all composed and performed by Elliot Wilder, performing as The Revenants. The Revenants are available on streaming platforms everywhere, or you can find them at therevenants1.bandcamp.com. Our theme song is Rest in Peace from the album Music from Big Beige, also by The Revenants. And I guess that's going to do it. Joseph, it's been a pleasure. And until next time, remember, we're weird.
And you're weird.
So why not be weird? together.